microphone in the Mevo camera, and I hope that is available and working. So even though it says we're live, I'm right now on my laptop trying to see if I'm live or not. There I am. I've got a few people here. Excellent. We are being, oh good, and it's got subtitles that are completely misunderstanding what I'm saying. So many of you have asked, Pastor, how are you doing? I'm feeling much, much better. Thank you. I have received a clearance date from work to go back to work on the 1st. So new month, new start. So I'm looking forward to that very much. Thank you very much for tuning in to the lesson today. I look forward to teaching it, and I hope that you look forward to hearing what I work to prepare for you. As far as announcements, please continue to pray for those in our church. We were able to cancel our physical meetings. It seemed just in the nick of time. There were a few folks who did end up having the coronavirus, but more and more folks are testing me saying I was negative, and I'm very thankful for that. I was negative, not like a negative Nelly, but negative for the coronavirus. Thank you, Pastor Kevin. He messaged me that he could hear me okay. I'm very thankful for that. So that's a blessing. I can only imagine of how much worse it would have been if we had just kind of dug in our heels and said, well, by George, I'm not going to let this, because this had nothing to do with the government. The last time we closed a couple of days before the government said that we had to. I wanted to be careful. Others around us were closing, and that was back in March, and I felt like that was a wise thing to do. This time, this was a very local and exclusive event to our church. I wasn't feeling well. I didn't think I had the coronavirus. I thought I just had a head cold that everybody had. That in combination, everybody's illness, and kind of in combination with one person who did have the coronavirus, I said, we're going to be extra safe. I'm not just going to have that person quarantined. We're all going to just be really careful. And as it turned out, there were a number of folks who were exposed already and did have it. And so it really just goes to show that there is not everything the government conspiracy, and not every pastor who closes hates Jesus and loves Bill Gates and the 666 immunization. I'm just saying, I think we were able to nip it in the bud before it got too bad. And so that's kind of where we're at. So I am still looking forward to reopening the church in October. October 4th is still my go-to date. I know that there are some folks who have been told to quarantine longer than that. I don't ask you to disobey. We'll just kind of get going with who we have and get things back to normal. And obviously the ugly topic of giving is what keeps the lights on. As covenant members of this church, we have come together to say, hey, we're going to share in the financial responsibility of supporting this ministry, supporting our Pastor Kevin, supporting Pastor Britt with the parsonage, the vehicle, and I'm thankful for that very much. But please be mindful that just because we're not together doesn't mean that we have to stop worshiping and giving. We have an online giving platform, or you can just bring your checks in, or just mail them in, or just hold on to them, but do deduct it from your register so that you're not taken by surprise if multiple checks are deposited at the same time when you return. So I thank you for hearing me out on that announcement. I know it's an ugly topic. Nobody really likes to talk about money. But I suppose that a church should probably be different from the world and be okay with talking about just about anything, especially the nitty-gritty of what keeps the wheels greased with the mobile church. Paul talked about money a ton, so did Jesus, because we know that we are called to be good stewards, et cetera, excuse me, and to support our local church. I can't really think of any other announcements. Just want to let you know, man, I love you and I miss you so much. It is not okay seeing every single chair in here empty. This is the first time I've done a live stream without one person in the auditorium. Typically on Wednesdays it was Ryan, and then on Sunday mornings obviously it was Pastor Kevin. He chose to live stream from home this week. We're just being extra careful here toward the tail end of this, making sure that just as soon as everybody starts getting better, we don't start it up again. And so I appreciate your patience with our prudence. And boy, we sure do love you. I love you, saints. I love my church. I love my people. I wouldn't be here if I didn't. And I know that sounds like a redundancy, but I tell you what, there is no way in the world you could take this big city guy, not big city guy, I'm losing weight, a lot of it, but to take a person who loves the big city and transplant him to a small town like Topsom, to a small church like TBC, and imagine that he would be happy in a scenario like that. That doesn't happen outside of love. And I know that many of you are here probably feeling the same way. I never saw myself in a church like this or with a pastor like you weirdo. But we see God's hand moving us and gathering us like a hen under her wings. So, but yeah. All right, I think that about does it for the announcements, giving folks some time to get together and getting all the live streams good to go. I think the volume's all set. I think we're live streaming on multiple platforms, and so let's get going in Matthew chapter 9. You probably noticed that, well, I'm going to pray, and then we'll jump into the text, okay? Father, I love you. Thank you for the time that we have watching this live stream. We are so far from each other, and even farther away from participating in the Lord's table, which I miss so desperately. That beautiful Passover ceremony, the beautiful supper, boy, I miss it. I miss it. And I miss my people. I feel like I'm farther away from you when I'm farther away from your church, which is probably exactly how I'm supposed to feel. Anyways, Lord, I'm trying to talk to you, not the folks out there right now. I just asked for your help this morning. As you know, I'm not quite at 100%. I'm feeling much better, but you know that I still struggle sometimes piecing together my words and things of that nature while I recover. And so I will need your help during the tail end of this virus, perhaps more than ever. And I'm asking for it now in Jesus' name. Amen and amen. Okay, good stuff. I'm going to try not to look at the viewing counter because that always throws me for a loop. I'm weak. I know I am. Other people could watch it go up and down and say, I'm glad at least one person's enjoying it. I kind of am that way more than before, but man, I'm going to try not to look and see, because then I'll wonder, what did I say? 3 people just left. When in reality, who knows, right? All right. So you probably noticed that over the last couple of months, we've been learning more and more about Jesus as we read through Matthew's account of Jesus' works, or Matthew's account of the gospel, the good news of the kingdom of Jesus Christ. These last couple of months, we've been looking at different stories. We've covered 7 so far. There's 2 more to cover about healing. The common trait in these stories is someone needs help. Jesus helps, usually while teaching and often while forgiving sins, restoring that person's rightness with God. Forgiving sin, as you know, was something that happened in the temple with the ceremony and the religious order, the empire, right? They had a grip on the forgiveness of sins. And if someone was unclean or if someone wasn't right according to these Pharisees and scribes and religious leaders and temple priests, they didn't get to be made right with God. They had to wonder, am I okay with God? I haven't. And we don't really fully grasp the difficulty in living in a religious system like that. There are religions today that still practice in a sense like that, with having to go to a priest for confession, having to say a certain amount of, and of course I'm thinking of the Roman Catholic institution. Unfortunately, I know there are many Roman Catholic believers, but the institution as a whole still teaches we've got to go to a place for forgiveness. We've got to talk to a certain human for forgiveness. Now they have kind of backed off on the absolution of sins from the confessional, and they kind of, well, it's more therapy, you know. Okay, but the hard realization of that is there is still this mentality that if you don't do these certain things and go through this certain routine or task list, then you are not forgiven. There is still a ceremony involved. Jesus came to dispel all of that. And so as we read through these last 2 stories of Jesus' works and miracles, you're going to see Jesus continue to say, I am the authority, not the established religious institution. Come to me for your healing. Come to me for forgiveness of sin. I have the power both in ability and in authority. Dunamis and exousia, the 2 Greek words that Jesus used to describe his ability and authority. So even though Matthew's accounts tend to be abbreviated, and even as we saw last week, compressed, or 2 weeks ago, was it last week? Last week, compressed, the gist of the stories harmonize beautifully with each other with these 3 synoptic gospels, and they help us learn more and more about Jesus as we read. So today is no exception. Let's jump into the text. We're going to begin in Matthew chapter 9. I don't ever put the verse numbers in my notes. I just, I do not like verses and divisions and things like that. My distaste for them grows more and more as I read these texts. You've got to be so careful. If you've got a Bible that divides, not just in chapters and verses, but also like subheadings that are intended to be helpful, and they are helpful in some way, please don't let them define the flow of the stories and categories in the Bible, okay? All right, verse 27 is where we're going to begin reading, and we're going to continue to read through verse 36. I know verse 36 might mark a new paragraph, but we're going to talk about it together. All right. And when Jesus departed thence, 2 blind men followed him, crying out, and saying, Thou Son of David, have mercy on us. And when he was come into the house, the blind men came to him, and Jesus saith unto them, Believe ye that I am able to do this? They said unto him, Yea, Lord. Yes, we do, yes. Why else would we be chasing you, right? Then touched he their eyes, saying, According to your faith, be it unto you. And their eyes were opened, and Jesus straightly charged them. We're going to talk about that phrase too. Very powerful phrase. He straightly charged them, saying, See that no man know it. But they, when they were departed, spread abroad his fame in all that country. We humans, we're not very good at following instructions sometimes, right? We talked about that a little bit on Wednesday. We do tend to take Christianity and then play by our rules, but Christianity was prescribed to be carried out in love, generosity, and genuineness. But anyhow, and as they went out, behold, they brought to him a dumb man possessed with the devil. Of course, dumb means mute or unable to speak. Some have said that this Greek word has also been used to describe people who cannot speak or hear. But for now, we'll just allow the text to say dumb as it does, and we can infer at least that he could not speak. And when the devil was cast out, the dumb spake. And the multitudes marveled, saying, It was never so seen in Israel. But the Pharisees said, He casteth out devils through the prince of the devils. Nice. And Jesus went about all the cities and villages, teaching in their synagogues and preaching the gospel of the kingdom and healing every sickness and every disease among the people. What a text. There's a lot there. There's plenty to talk about from these 2 accounts of Jesus healing. So let's go through the text together and make some observations, okay? So first, I want to do a little bit of review before we jump right into the text at hand that will help us understand the text at hand. You got to trust me on this, which is like a huge part of the lesson today. Trust me, right? Trust me. Have faith in me. Have an open mind that we're going to jump into the history of these texts, and it'll help us, it'll illuminate today's text a little bit more. So what's Matthew's goal in writing this gospel? The gospel according to Matthew. What is his goal? He's carefully crafting a new Torah. Remember that? We talked about that at the beginning. This new Torah revolves around the new human, Jesus Christ, the Messiah, the rescuer, the deliverer from the lineage of Abraham and David. See how that works? Okay. We got that gist from the introduction of his work when Matthew opens up by saying, this is the genesis of Jesus. He's like, hey, you know, lights flashing. I'm doing something very particular here. I'm crafting this account of the gospel for the Jews to see that Jesus is the new covenant, because there was an old covenant, the Torah, yes, and Jesus is the new covenant or New Testament, hence Matthew being the first book in the New Testament. Big impact, all right? So with his account of the gospel, Matthew has 3 goals. 3 goals essentially. We could break them down to a lot more than that, but just at least these 3. He wants to present Jesus as the Messiah, the rescuer, the deliverer, the anointed one from the line of David, right? He wants to present Jesus as the new authority like Moses, and then he wants to present Jesus as the Son of Man, or Emmanuel, God with us. He's presenting Jesus in these 3 ways. Some have suggested that Matthew wrote his account of the gospel to be a primer for teaching. Some have said it was a, what's the other one? Oh goodness, I had it right in my mind. I did some research on this and I didn't put it in my notes, and that's where I go wrong. But some have described Matthew as having several different kinds of goals. Why did Matthew write this account? What was the point? Regardless of exactly why, and I'm sure it wasn't just for one reason, we do know that Matthew had in mind to reframe the 5 books of the Old Testament in this one gospel account. In that, Matthew is neatly divided into 5 different sections, and we'll talk about that as we reach the end of our series. So Matthew moved to accomplish the first and last of these goals, present Jesus as the Messiah and present Jesus as the Emmanuel, God with us. So not only is he the deliverer sent from God, but he is God with us, God himself in the flesh. And he does that with the genesis of Jesus, the divine implications of his birth, and all the prophecies being fulfilled. And we say, no, this is definitely this man from the sticks. This Yeshua min Nazaret, there's something special about this man. He's not just a man. He is a man, but he's more than a man. And that's what we're supposed to get from that infancy narrative leading up into the Sermon on the Mount. The second goal, where Jesus is presented as the new authority like Moses, think please, Moses, he went up into the mountain, received the law from God, and then came down from the mountain. Oh, you're going to love this. This is so cool. And he came down from the mountain to give the law to the people. Moses spoke as one who had authority from God. He just went up to the mountain and spent time with God. Well, check this out. Matthew forms this connection by having Jesus go out into the wilderness for 40 days. You see how that works, yeah? And then Jesus takes the people up into the mountain with him. Now, interestingly, please understand that in the Old Testament, when Moses went up on Mount Sinai, the people were invited to go up, but they said, no, we're going to croak. And only Moses went up. Jesus, now, after a couple thousand years, has finally reached his goal, or 1,500 years or so, whatever it is, no, come on, it doesn't matter. All right, a long time. Has reached his goal of having the people come up into the mountain with him. And instead of him receiving some law from God and coming down and sharing it with others, the people come up and they hear him speak the new law to the people. It's a Moses figure. Jesus is the authority. Because everybody's the law of Moses, the law of Moses, the law of Moses, the law of Moses. Well, Paul was a Jew of all Jews, and he made the connection. And so you hear him talk about the law of Christ. Because Matthew 5 through 7, we overlook this a lot, I think. We memorize some of the Beatitudes, but please don't misunderstand. That's the very fundamentals of Christianity. That's the gospel of the kingdom. That is the gospel, the good news. People say, oh, the gospel is the death, burial, and resurrection of Jesus Christ. It is so much more than that, and I don't want people to truncate and over-compress the gospel into a pithy thing that can be fit on a postcard. That's not how the gospel writers present it. If they wanted to do that, they would have just written little, tiny, tracts or something. But instead, they took the time to expound on the glory and the beauty of Jesus Christ. And people need that now more than ever, by the way. Anyhow, so Matthew has and is continuing to establish Jesus as the Son of Man, the Messiah, but the one who has authority like Moses, the new Moses. And so in Matthew 5 through 7, he teaches and preaches the law, the good news of the kingdom, the new law, right? And then, as we've looked in Matthew 8 and 9, Jesus is now bringing that kingdom to others, okay? So, I'm just going to read what I wrote here. It's a little bit redundant, but let me just read it here. So what about the section we've been in since Matthew 7 concluded? This series of loosely connected miracles and works of Jesus. Well, these are actually 9 accounts of Jesus bringing this new kingdom into people's lives. Some have counted 10. I went back and counted. I'm like, dude, there's 9. I don't understand. Anyways, you can have fun with that, I guess. But I think 9 works really well, and I'll tell you why. He just got done teaching about the new kingdom in chapters 5 through 7, and now he's been bringing the new kingdom to people in chapters 8 and 9, just like we said. Matthew's goal is, among other things, listen, to show what it looks like when people have faith in Jesus. They become personal beneficiaries of the new kingdom and have all its benefits appropriated to them here and now when they exercise faith or dependence on Jesus. It's a bit of a long sentence, but I think it sounded good, and when I wrote it, I italicized it because I think it works. So let me read it to you one more time. Matthew's goal is to show what it looks like when people have faith in Jesus. They become personal beneficiaries of the new kingdom and have all its benefits appropriated to them here and now. When someone believes in Jesus, when someone shows that they trust in and depend on Jesus, they come to him saying, I believe you are who you say you are. I don't have any hope but you. That's when it happens. What's it? We'd probably say salvation today. When the deliverer gets the opportunity to deliver. And please don't misunderstand. Jesus is, everybody says, oh man, why doesn't he just save everybody? His heart is to save everybody. Don't get that twisted. But I think it's fair to say that And I know a lot of illustrations have been drawn and a lot of phrases have been uttered about this, some of which I'm comfortable with, some of which I'm not. But the long-standing nature of the reality of Jesus' salvation is that it's open to all who will come to him, who will believe in him. Uh, he would not ever try to force us to believe and depend any more than we would try to force anyone to believe and depend on him. You can't make that happen. It's a change from within. You can compel people to say things, to renounce things even under torture and duress, but to change the inner heart of a human, to change the very core of what they believe, that can't happen through compulsion. It only can happen when you draw people with goodness and kindness and love, which we should all take notes from. All right? Now, with all of this background in mind, good job. You hung in there. You made it. All right. Let's take a look at the response of the two. We just read the text, right? You read it with me. We get it. Let's look at the response of these two blind men to Jesus. They called him the Son of David. Why is this significant? Is it for sure the only time so far anybody's called him the Son of David? Maybe, maybe not. We don't know. But Matthew seems to be driving at a point here. Who were the first people in Matthew's gospel to see Jesus for who he truly is? Blind people. Blind people. I really think Matthew's trying to make a point here. Calling Jesus the Son of David. This is a very, remember, what's Matthew's three goals? One of his three goals is to show that Jesus Christ is the Son of David. He is the true, once and future king, then and future king, forever king, to forever sit on the throne of David. It's so beautiful how it works. So, what about it? These two blind men couldn't see a thing, but they saw the thing that mattered most, is that Jesus Christ is who he says he is, the Son of David, the king who is coming to set up his kingdom. So, the blind saw Jesus first. I got to tell you, that's a big point. That's a big point. Now, some might jump in, and especially I tell you what, there's this atheist out there, his name's Aaron Ra. He's a real, I don't hate him, I love him, I really do. But he just, well, I tell you, man, he's one of the guys who tries to win debates, not with reason, but with like volume and intimidation, and it's really bad. It's awful to watch because he could be dismantled so easily, and he's just, anyway, I'm sorry, I don't mean to be uncharitable, but wow. Anyway, this guy, he's on this hobby horse lately of faith is blind. You can't have faith without being blind. Blind faith, blind faith. No. The Christian's faith is not blind. That's not what this text is saying. Oh, yeah, only the blind see Jesus. No. The whole point was that everyone should have seen Jesus, but only the blind did. The whole idea is that there's a principle of embarrassment here, is that everybody who should have seen Jesus in all of his glory and say, whoa, this is truly the Son of David. This is the one. They didn't see what was right in front of their eyes. In fact, even the disciples who were closest to Jesus seems to have had the weakest amount of faith, right? And it was these blind people who couldn't actually even see him, followed him. Can you imagine stumbling around without seeing, you just following the crowd the best you can, followed Jesus. To what end? Being healed. Not because of blind faith, but the faith of the blind. Their faith was not blind. Their faith was actually quite informed. They thought about it. They meditated on it. You remember when Jesus said, go and learn what this means? They went and learned what it meant to have Jesus among them. It was the Son of David. Anyhow, notice also that Jesus, we're just going to go through this text. I'm having an absolute blast. Somebody once tried to me for saying that, in love, why do you have to tell people how much fun you're having? Are we having fun? I get it. I understand where you're coming from. But I'm just letting you know, man, I'm geeking out up here. I'm having a blast. I hope you are too. We should have fun together. Now, I'm going to turn this guy down a little bit and watch some Netflix while he teaches. That way I'm still there, but I'm not actually listening. Hey, I encourage you, turn off all the other distractions. Turn this live stream up and listen to the Word of God and let it feed your hearts, okay? Notice that Jesus actually went into a house despite their call. Son of David, Son of David. You would think, right, by today's standard, that when Jesus heard it, they said the magic word. But instead he went into a house. Was he ignoring them? I don't think so. I don't know why Jesus went into a house. before responding to their pleas. I wish I could say with authority. I don't think it's listen. I don't think it's necessarily a bad inference to say that. Okay, I'll read what I wrote. I don't think it's necessarily a bad inference to say that Jesus wanted to see some level of desperation, kind of like in Luke 11 with the bread at midnight story, because of your importunity, that sort of thing. But we need to be really careful not to frame this as they got their prayers answered because they had enough faith. Because what's the inverse of that? Oh, I didn't get my prayers answered. I must not have had enough faith. That's tricky. We don't want to do that. That's not a good state of mind. It really ends up being prosperity gospel preaching, but instead of money, it's faith. You're just trading one currency for another. So if we're not careful, we can see Jesus accidentally as a vending machine. You put enough faith in the slot, right? And out pops your miracle. We were watching Chronicles of Narnia with the kids, the second one, and Lucy asked Aslan toward the end, why didn't you just come and save us all and prevent the death of all of these people? And Aslan looks at Lucy and he says, because things never happen the same way twice. Dude, is that true or what? Like in my prayer life, sometimes I'll be like, I barely even want something. I'm just like, yeah, that'd be cool. And then it's like answered with great gusto. And then there's other times I'm like begging and pleading God, man, why can't this happen? Please, please, please. And it's like, where are you, Aslan, right? Where are you? God has his reasons. Talking about that movie Breakthrough where the young man fell through the ice and he was pronounced dead and he came back to life and everybody's like, man, this is a miracle. What's your secret, Mom? I don't think she would ever have a secret. And we say, boy, that boy must be destined for great things. He seems like a sharp young man. I don't know if he's going to. We don't know. The very carefully planned acts of God often look capricious and arbitrary to us. Something to keep in mind. Anyways, so I don't believe that Jesus is trying to teach us that he's a vending machine and we just got to stick enough faith in the slot. No, I think that the best I've got as far as an answer to this is Jesus is drawing them to follow him so that the reality of their faith, listen, so that the reality of their faith would manifest in a fullness of trust and an exclusivity of dependence on Jesus. A fullness of trust and an exclusivity of dependence on Jesus. Get a call. Decline the call. All right. Hopefully it didn't cut me off there. Anyways, I don't know who would call on Sunday morning. I don't know. I'm teaching here. Maybe it was somebody who was watching and said, I just wanted to say amen. I just hope it didn't interrupt the flow. I don't think it did. Anyways, right. Now, Jesus, when viewed this way, rather than a vending machine, but rather that he was drawing them so that they could show and demonstrate their dependence on him as the only source of healing, the sole deliverer, the object of trust, who will only ever, listen, how about this? Jesus will only ever be the one who is actually and always worthy of your trust. People will let you down. Institutions will let you down. I struggle at the number of people who say, well, boy, this pastor I knew back when I was a kid, he did this, and now I'm not a Christian. I guess I understand that because who are you supposed to be looking at as an icon of Christianity except the leaders? But people stink. People make a lot of mistakes. Pastor Kevin talked about that this morning in Bible study. People make a lot of mistakes. The answer to that is just to confess, forsake, and try to move on. But I guess we do tend to dig our heels in and try to justify our mistakes, but that's another story altogether. The whole point is Jesus was not trying to teach us that he's a vending machine. He was trying to show us that the kind of dependence and faith that moves him is the kind of dependence and faith that says, you are the only one I can trust. You're the only one I can run to. So the blind saw Jesus. Now, listen, keep going with me. We're making no intermissions, no interludes. We're trying to get right into the text. We're about halfway through. You're doing great. Even though the timer reached 30 minutes, we've only been at it for about 20. We're making great time. Hang in there. All right. Now, look at what Jesus actually does. He opens up with the question. This is the first time in the gospel, even though he has asked questions, it's the first time that he's opened up dialogue with a question. What did he say? He says, do you believe that I am able to do this? You see, Jesus, I wrote this here, I think it makes sense. Jesus is verbalizing a question to give these men the opportunity to verbalize their response. He is giving them a privilege, an opportunity. I like it when people say thank you to me. Well, aren't you special? No, I love it when people say thank you to me. I just did some, we had the opportunity to do something that took a lot of time and some money for somebody yesterday. That person did not express gratitude, but that person texted me this morning and said, "Thank you," by the way. And I just got tickled from the top of my head to the bottom of my toes. Awesome. And I said, "Thank you for saying thank you," because it gives me the opportunity to say, "You're welcome." When you verbalize your gratitude, you are giving me the opportunity to verbalize something that I consider to be a appropriate response to say, "You are welcome. You are welcome to my gifts. You are welcome to my service. You are welcome." And so it's this beautiful, positive, upward cycle of gratitude and a appropriate response of saying, "You are welcome. Welcome to me. Welcome to what I can do for you," you see. So imagine the 10 lepers, right? Come on, just throwing this out there. The 10 lepers Jesus healed, only one of them came back so that Jesus could say, "You are welcome." Oh, it's beautiful. Don't say no problem. Don't say forget about it. Don't say no worries. Say you are welcome. That's beautiful. If you really like Chick-fil-A, you can say my pleasure. But, anyways, all right. That's like the Baptist currency there, Chick-fil-A. So anyways, so my whole point is Jesus gave them the opportunity to verbalize their response by verbalizing a question. Do you believe that I am able to do this? Able there, since we've been talking about that word, is the word dunamis, which means, do you think I have the power to do this? Can I do this for you? He is just luring them in to say what he knows they believe in here, to confess with their mouth what they believe in their heart, you see. So, this dependence activates his healing power. Simple as that. Trust is what moves him. I just wrote here, their response that Jesus gave them the opportunity to verbalize was an open mind of faith. That was their response, an open mind of faith. And it's the first of 3 minds that we're going to talk about in our text. So we're going to tackle the idea of open-mindedness in a little bit, but for now, let's move on in the story. Notice how the healing, by the way, comes to us in just 5 words. What are the 5 words? And their eyes were open. So just from the volume of words, right, the actual point of their healing has been becoming less and less, I think, as I read through these texts, the focal point of Matthew, because this is the 9th healing in just a couple chapters. At this point, we're getting the idea, yes, Jesus healed, yes, Jesus healed. Why so many, sorry, I just got a message that the camera's doing something freaky. I don't see that on my end, but I trust you. I'm going to have to keep going, though, because I do see, I'm watching the live stream here. I'm a little lappy-toppy. But it does seem to be okay at this point, just on my end, just letting you know. I'm going to keep watching it, though. Thank you for the heads up. So, yes. Where was I? Yes, open-mindedness. We're going to move on from that. Yes, the actual healing is a small part of the story, because as we've been moving through Matthew, we're seeing that Jesus is healing again and again and again. So the point that Matthew's trying to communicate to us is this is more than just about physical healing. We've been picking up on that as we're moving through. Now, I want to get to we're going to get to the meat here in just a second. You've been doing so great. Thank you for continuing to listen and to watch. All right. Now, Jesus is trying to teach that faith, trust, and dependence on him, it's all he wants or needs. By the way, this is called an inductive lesson when we're building up to the point. So you got to hang with me. I appreciate it very much. It means a lot to me. So this utter dependence, by the way, on Jesus gives birth to the other fruits that are so essential to the Christian life. Well, if I could just be holy enough, if I could just be pure enough, if I could just be long-suffering enough, if I could just be faithful enough, if I could just be kind enough, if I could just be meek enough. No. Throw yourself on Jesus. Depend on him. Believe in him. Rest in him. Rely on him. Have faith in him, and that faith will manifest in those other. You say, I don't understand how that's possible. Anything you believe in will change your life. If you believe that the Patriots are the greatest football team ever and that Cam Newton's doing a pretty good job for them this year, that's going to show in your actions and attitudes, hopefully in a small way, because I don't think it's going to be a really big part of our lives, but there are people who are absolute fanatics about certain things, and it changes everything about them, whether they want it to or not. If you are a fanatic about Jesus and throw yourself on him and say, look, I really believe this guy. I think he was more than a man. That is going to change you, and it's going to change you into a better, more profitable human. You say, well, that's pretty closed-minded. Are you saying Christians are the best kind of people on planet Earth? Well, we should be. We should be. We'll get to that here in a second, too. All right. Keep moving through the text. Jesus straightly charged them. It's a very quick section, but that straightly charge comes from the Greek word embrima omai. You say, whoa, what is that? It's a very powerful command. It is an extremely stern order. He wasn't messing around. He said, do not tell anyone what you've seen here, what I've done here. Don't do it. Why did Jesus do this? And why did he do it a number of times in the gospel accounts? Why is he so insistent, so sternly insistent on people not knowing? Well, here's some options. One, some people have said it's because Jesus didn't desire vainglory. Fair enough, it's a possibility. Others have said that he was attempting to be covert from devilish forces. Others have said, well, the more that people knew of Jesus' works, the more his earthly enemies would know and would try to kill him faster. I think there's grains of truth in just about every option that I have written here. I'm not going to go into all of them, but here's the answer to me that rises to the surface that combines elements from all of these options. Jesus did not want people to exalt him yet because it was not yet time for Jesus to be lifted up as king. With all this fame, the timetable would accelerate, and people would be more likely to elevate him as the earthly king based on his miracles and wondrous works, and ultimately speed up his execution. They never seemed to listen when Jesus told them not to tell, but I think his command did somehow influence their manner of communication in some way. Either way, it's a profitable thought experiment, and it's worth thinking about. If you've got an answer that you think is true as to why Jesus did not want people to hear about his works, please drop it in the comments below. I'd be happy to read your thoughts later. So the next and final event in this series of stories in our text is the account of the mute man. This just takes, I've got 2 paragraphs on this one. It's even quicker, but try to tune in, okay? So this would be just another illness. He can't speak. But Matthew chalks it up. He goes out of his way to recall that this man's sickness was due to demonic forces. You say, I don't believe in all that stuff. I'm going to quote Narnia again, okay? I think it's pretty fitting. No, this wasn't Narnia. This was actually a pagan Facebook post about this was crazy. But there was a grain of truth to it. Basically, it was just a weird meme on Facebook, and it was intended to be taken entirely seriously. And the person, it's got this person dressed up like a shaman, and it's all like Instagram friendly shaman. So you have all the makeup to the nines and all that. And it's it's like a white witch, a good shaman in touch with the wolves and bears and flowers. And basically the message was, well, we all used to practice the magics, but now they're not really practiced anymore. That was in Narnia. That was another thing. I did see both this week. The same. Oh, that's what it was. There was a bear who was coming out, and he was attacking the kids, and they were amazed because the bear was wild, and he didn't talk. And then the dwarf said, if you treat it like a beast long enough, it'll eventually start acting like one. And so you see this loss of ability over time just because of a loss of the environment. Now, you say, Pastor, why are you bringing all that up, you weirdo? It's because I really do think that at this time and place in the world, supernatural forces were certainly more frequent. They were more visible. And I don't think it was just superstition, because you got some highly educated scholars here looking at this and saying, yeah, demons are definitely being casted out. This was the Pharisees who looked, and they had no reason to believe that demons were. In fact, if they could deny it, they would have. But instead of denying that demons were being casted out, they just blamed it on, well, he's doing it by the power of devils, which is, we'll cover that in just 2 seconds. But Matthew is showing that this was due to demonic forces, which seems far-fetched to us today, but maybe wasn't then. Clearly wasn't then. I've said it before, I'll say it again. If you're going to believe the Bible, you got to believe what it intends to teach and convey. It's a whole different world sometimes, whether ancient or mysterious. And I'm just saying, you've got to have an open mind about it. Oh, that goes right into our lesson. Anyway, we're getting so close. We're reaching the zenith, and I hope there'll be an aha moment in here or two for you. Watch. Okay, watch. I've only had 1 cup of coffee. This is my second one. Haven't even started it yet. There you go. All right. Now, yes, Jesus, as his manner was, showed his authority over sickness and devils by casting out this man's chthonic occupant. Chthonic, I don't know why I wrote that in my notes. Even as I wrote it, I said, why am I writing that word? Chthonic is an old word which means like hellish or whatever. This demonic occupant, yes. And all the people were absolutely amazed. They were beside themselves with wonder. He read it in the text. They marveled. They said, whoa, we've never seen anything like this in Israel. In the whole nation is what they're saying. Not just this town or that town. This just doesn't happen. And again, this was unprecedented in Jewish history. It used to be, well, if that was the way it was, you're kind of stuck with it. They didn't have a miracle working God in such small-scale individual experiences. He worked with the nation as a whole, you see. And of course, there were, and I love this. Listen, one of the common objections to miracles, I think David Hume, he wrote this, explosive book against miracles, and he said, come on, you expect me to believe that all these miracles happen all the time, and that there's not, listen, in the entire scope of human history, we've got enough miracles to fit in a book this tiny. Tiny, yeah, this is a tiny book. So they're not very frequent. They don't happen all the time. But then when Jesus comes on the scene, he's doing them everywhere. Do you see the idea here? That Jesus is shaking the foundations of what they believe. He's shaking them to the point when they say, this is not part of our Jewish history. This is not part of our religion. He must be doing this by the power of devils. So these religious leaders came up with a blasphemous and groundless accusation, all because of their pride and self-loss. We're toward the end of the narrative here. We're toward the end of the text, so we're going to move to conclude and make some application here. But have you ever noticed that people do that? Listen, please, listen. We're landing the plane. We're setting on our flaps. But have you ever noticed that people do that? When confronted with something with which they disagree or with which they are unhappy, many people resort to insults. They resort to accusations. We're about to see that with Amy Coney Barrett. God bless her. Vitriol, anger, hatred, spite, gritting teeth hate. This happens to me on Facebook nearly every time I post a genuinely loving and respectful disagreement on Shelley Pingree post. She's our state rep there. And just this morning, I was talking about how I was excited about, because, Shelley Pingree posted this thing about how horrible it's going to be for women's health, She means abortion, murder. And how just it's terrible, terrible. And I got on there and I said, I'm really excited about this. I think this is wonderful. I'm really looking forward to it, blah, 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 blah. And I said, the amount of hatred or whatever, insults lobbed at me just shows how much we need a decent and honorable human being in the Supreme Court, something like that, right? Immediately after that, right, within an hour, somebody got on there and said, this is a bunch of blankety blank, can't say it from the pulpit. And so I put a meme there that was like, this is my point. You're literally doing what I said you would do. And then she responds, you're a sad little man. And I got on there and I said, man, you're probably a really nice person in person. And I mean that sincerely. Nobody's ever as mean as they are on Facebook, well, very rarely. Said, you seem to be probably affable. We could probably get along despite our disagreements in person. Why are you being so mean to me on social media? Very mean, very insulting. Why? Same thing that the Pharisees did. Same exact thing. Something was happening that they didn't like, and so instead of saying, we should open our minds to this possibility. This is big. Come on, Saint. We should open our minds to this possibility. Instead of saying that, like rational people, they said, you know what? No. He's casting out devils by the prince of devils. Now, if they had taken 2 seconds to think about what they were saying, they might have changed their tune, because Jesus would later go on to say, I don't know if it's in this gospel or the next one, in the other synoptic, but at one point he does tell them, how can Satan cast out Satan? How does that work, right? He just brings the charge to them. He said, okay, you're insisting that I'm casting out devils by the power of the devil. How does that work, right? We don't see that response here. He may not respond that way here. But later, he does have some pretty strong words for that. Remember the unforgivable sin and everything? Yeah. Now, let's expound, summarize, and conclude. That's what I wrote. I don't know, I'm such a nerd. And conclude our study of this text, okay? Ultimately, there are 3 states of being in these 2 accounts that tell one story, all right? 3 states of being in 2 accounts that tell one story. Here's the 3 states of being. The blind who see are the open minds. We talked about that. The crowd who marvels are the observant minds. And the Pharisees who mock are the obstinate minds. They won't see it. They won't see it. Some have said closed-minded. I get that. Obstinate, stubborn. People who say, I will not see it. There were those who said, oh man, this is incredible. And they saw it. They at least had the open mind. This is happening and it's big. But the blind men, they had the open minds to see that this was the son of David. You see how that works? Now, these three minds in two accounts tell one story about people who have concluded who Jesus is. And today, who Christians are. We're going to talk about that in a second, too. In the end, this is actually a story about many blind men, you see, and only a few who could actually see. When you go into the story, you think it's going to be about two blind men, but it's not. It's not. It's about two men who could see, and everybody else who was blind. And there were some people who had their eyes open when they saw what Jesus did, and they said, this stuff has never been done before. Maybe they went back to being blind. Maybe they stayed looking at Jesus. But the whole point is, well, the title of my lesson this morning, Two Stories of Blind Men. The first story shows two blind men who could see. The second story shows a bunch of people who could see but were blind, especially the Pharisees, you see, particularly the Pharisees. I want to close by talking to you about faith, and then I'm going to share one really, really special thing about this section as a whole. Now's the time to tune in if you haven't tuned in, please. Faith is the opposite of thinking that you already know everything there is to know, or that you need to know, or that you think you need to know. Faith is the opposite of that. Faith is open-mindedness. Faith is coming to Jesus and saying, you know what? I don't know everything there is to know for sure, and I don't even know everything about you, but I know enough about you to know that you are special and that you are my only hope. And coming to Jesus with that kind of faith, that's open-mindedness. Open-mindedness. In this story, faith is presented as openness or a commitment to be open. Somebody else once said that faith is a commitment to open-mindedness. I like that. Faith is a commitment to open-mindedness. Last page. Faith is about refusing to make a conclusion about something or someone until you've opened yourself to all the possibilities. In other words, it's the opposite of obstinate-mindedness or closed-mindedness. Interestingly, here it is, come on, saints. Interestingly, it is the Christians who are often told that we are the most closed-minded people in the world. They will look at Christians and say, you are so closed-minded. You are so closed-minded. I can't believe you have such a closed mind. Love is love, regardless of gender or age or whatever. Come on. It's getting sick out there, man. What a closed-minded thing to say. No. It's actually open-minded because I've opened my mind to the possibility that maybe there's someone who can tell us what love really is. You see, right? John said, here's what love is. Here's what love is. That Jesus loved us so much that while we were yet sinners, he died for us. Right? Here in his love, not that we loved him, but that he first loved us. That's what John said. And of course, I ended up quoting Paul. But God can, Romans 6, no, I'm getting my Romans road mixed up. I haven't used the Roman road forever. I like to use like the whole Bible like Jesus did. But God commended or demonstrated his love toward us, and that while we were yet sinners, Christ died for us. That's what love is. So you can say love is love all you want, but it's ignorance and closed-mindedness not to set parameters around that love, but to say that there are no parameters around that love. You see how that works? Yeah. If I go to build a skyscraper, it's got to follow a certain blueprint. And somebody might say, that's very closed-minded of you. Yes, but it's actually closed-minded of you to say that you can just build a skyscraper however you want. Don't you see? In the end, whose skyscraper will be scraping the sky? The closed-minded one, according to the world. But in reality, it's rather open-minded to say, I don't know how to build a skyscraper without blueprints. I need help. Open-mindedness, dependence, faith, trust, you see. Anyhow, so in reality, a Christian who knows Jesus can tell you that walking with Jesus, listening to his teaching, and letting him work in our lives actually has the opposite effect of closed or obstinate-mindedness. We have our eyes open. We see the world with all its possibilities and beauties and glories, and where the world is befuddled and shrouded in mystery and ignorance, we can say, I've seen this issue through the eyes of a Christian worldview. The light of Christ has shone upon this and has illuminated it. So in reality, it's those who have come to Jesus in faith have the open minds. And those who insist that Jesus does not have the answer, those that are more closed mind or obstinate mind. So there's the text. Well, almost. One last verse to check out. I want to share it with you by way of conclusion in this little mini series of Matthew 8 and 9. Although we still have one lesson left toward the end of Matthew 9, but listen close, please. Instead of trying to come up with a cool closing illustration or a sweet technique of pedagogy, I just want to show you that Matthew already did that. Check out how this ends. In Matthew 9:35, and Jesus went about all the cities and villages, teaching in their synagogues and preaching the gospel of the kingdom and healing every sickness and every disease among the people. Okay, great verse, Britt, but listen, go back to Matthew chapter 4, verse 23. Just before the gospel of the kingdom through the Sermon on the Mount was preached and taught, look at what Matthew says. Matthew 4:23, and Jesus went about all Galilee, teaching in their synagogues and preaching the gospel of the kingdom and healing all manner of sickness and all manner of disease among the people. What you're looking at is two bookends. Two bookends. Now listen, in Matthew 4:23, just before 5 through 7 starts, you've got this one bookend. You know what a bookend is, right? Things that go on different ends of books. It keeps them together, right? It's a bracket, right? Forms a nice cohesive set. Yes. Now, one end, Matthew is introducing what this gospel of the kingdom looks like. And then look at what the description is. Teaching and preaching the gospel of the kingdom. And then, part 2 of that, right? Healing every sickness and every disease among the people. So you have these two amazing bookends. So the first half of what goes in these bookends are the 9 blessings. Remember when we talked about the 9 blessings, the Beatitudes? And then you have the 9 healings. You have this beautiful set of 9 healings. You see, it's cool. So you have this Matthew 5 through 7, the 9 blessings, and Jesus expounded on those, and here is lessons on the Sermon on the Mount. The gospel of the kingdom, and then we watched the 9 healings where Jesus went to the people, and instead of saying, hey, everybody come to me, I got something to sell you, he goes in among them and says, hey, I want to bring the kingdom to you. That's what Christians ought to be doing. Instead of sitting up in our, what do you call them, ivory palaces? No, that's not the right word. Sitting up there, alabaster something, I don't know, abalone shell, I don't know what it is. I bet there's people online going, come on, Britt, get the phrase right. But instead of sitting in our little towers looking down on the people saying, come on up, I'll tell you about Jesus, we're supposed to be bringing in the kingdom and moving among the people and showing the open-mindedness of Christianity. Not open-mindedness that says, anything goes, you guys are right, let's just enjoy everything. No, open-mindedness that says, hey, listen, have you considered that Jesus is king and that all the wonderful things that you see around you were ordered and created out of things that once were not, but now they are, because we have a God who can create things out of nothing, and he creates the laws of physics, and he creates the beauty of emotion, and he creates the grandeur of love, and all of these things that you experience on a regular basis, we were meant to experience under the authority and wisdom of a holy, wonderful, loving God. And that God is Jesus Christ. Have you considered this? Have you opened your mind to be amazed and gobsmacked, flabbergasted by the marvelous works of Jesus Christ? And someone might say, I don't believe those Bronze Age tales from goat herders. You have a very closed mind, sir. But if you come to Jesus and say, man, I don't know a lot about a lot, but I know that things just don't pop out of things from nothing. Somebody had to get this ball rolling, literally. And I know that this thing called love isn't something we were meant to wield without wisdom. It's not something that wasn't supposed to be tempered by an authoritative Lord. Otherwise, look at the chaos. Fornication, adultery, pornography, homosexuality, bestiality, and pedophilia. Do you understand? That's what happens when the fire gets out of the fireplace and burns down the house. But Jesus, our Lord, our Master, our authority, says, this is how you handle your feet. Do you see? Yes. So it's not closed-mindedness to come to the conclusion that Jesus is Lord. It's actually quite the opposite. Those who refuse him are obstinate-minded. They are closed-minded. So this beautiful design patterns of 2 bookends with 9 blessings and 9 healing was designed to show one big train of thought. Jesus Christ came to teach about the gospel of the kingdom and then came down off the mountain to move among the people and to live out the kingdom in himself. This beautiful design pattern was done to show you who Jesus is, the real Jesus. And when people see and hear the real, actual, historical Jesus, they cannot remain in a neutral state. You either will have an open mind or you will have an obstinate mind. You see? One of those two. I understand there's three states of mind, and we talked about the other ones. They were observant, right? They saw what happened, but you can't stay in an observant mind for long. That's the point of decision. You will end up either open toward Jesus Christ or obstinate against him and all that he represents and teaches. So I encourage you today to come to the wine and the bread in spirit, tragically, with the remembrance of our Passover, Jesus Christ, the one who came and lived to teach and to preach the gospel of the kingdom and to introduce us to this new humanity in Jesus. Let's embrace this man with an open mind and open arms. And lastly, let us have our sight restored and our speech unfettered by an encounter with the risen Jesus. Lord, I love you and I thank you for this text. I thank you for the folks who have tuned in. The alarmingly disastrous nature of live streaming is that it just isn't the same. But Lord, I am begging you to work and to have moved in a significant way enough to keep us educated and encouraged, so that by next Sunday, as you will, we come back together, ready to continue on at the end of Matthew 9. Thank you for this beautiful series, these 9 blessings and 9 healings, and how you've shown the kind of person you are and the kind of person that you want to be through us. And so, Lord, with that in mind, I ask that we just come to you with an open mind and an open heart and surrender our actions and our attitudes to you and let you work through us to make this world a better place. And Lord, on a special note, I am asking your blessing on Amy Coney Barrett in the coming weeks. There's a lot of crazy stuff going on in politics right now, God, but it would just be really cool if she could be a Supreme Court justice without too much character assassination or anything like that. And I ask that you would guide the process and that you would be there in a special way. Don't let the raging, obstinate-minded crowd mitigate or defer a real potential good thing for the United States of America. Please preserve us in these our hours of decay and moral corruption. And we ask these things in the precious name of our holy Savior, Jesus Christ. Amen. All right, saints, we did it. I hope that you have a wonderful day. Oh man, I'm glad I didn't see that little number toward the end. It's just the nature of the beast, man. See, when you're here, you can't leave. You see what I'm saying? I got you. And if you leave, everybody's going to be looking at you. But online, Anyway, hey, I love you, saints. I can't wait to see you again. And I hope that you have a wonderful Lord's Day with your families. Oops, I touched the wrong part of the screen and just